Welcome to Books on Air, the podcast you really don't want to miss. I'm Suzanne Harris, and today you'll get a sneak peek behind the scenes at what it's like to be an author. The author will share their backstory behind their book, who or what inspires them, where their ideas come from, and who knows, you might even get an inside scoop on a new project. If you want to know more about the author and their work, we'll tell you where to find them on social media. Joining me today is Thomas Whedon, and Tom is here to talk about his book, And There Was Light, an examination of the claims of young earth creationists in the light of scriptures and proven science. Now, Tom Whedon served in the United States Air Force before receiving a Bachelor of Science degree in electrical engineering and pursuing postgraduate work in advanced physics. He attended Bible college, and he earned a Master of Divinity degree from a graduate seminary. Today, he's a retired engineer and a pastor who teaches Bible in a large church. First of all, Tom, welcome to Books on Air. It's such a pleasure to have you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much as well for your service, because I think that's always important to recognize. When I have someone that's been in the Air Force or one of the other services, I always like to say thank you because I think that's important.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about the book. You know, it's my experience that every book has two stories. The first story is the one that the reader gets when they pick up a copy of the book and they read through the book. That's story number one. But there's always a backstory. There's always a reason that the book was written. There's always something behind the book that somebody reads. So what's the backstory behind And Then There Was Light? How did it come into being?
Well, I had serious problems with some of my professors in Bible college and graduate school, seminary, and that there was this constant pressure over a literal interpretation, or at least what they pushed as a literal interpretation of the Bible in regards to creation. Because of my background in science, I had some reservations about what they were teaching. Furthermore, I realized that our church populations are going down. This has been publicized for several years, and it's been on the news, things like that. On top of that, I've noticed that young teenagers are dropping out of the churches, left and right. So we're having a problem in the churches. And I have started approaching some people on this issue, and I've gotten mixed answers. And there's a dichotomy here, which is there are those who are taught to believe that the Bible, every word of the English Bible, I'm going to emphasize the word English, every word of the English Bible is wholly inspired of God and infallible, and therefore it's true. If the Bible is telling you that the earth is flat, then that's it. It's flat. Okay? And remember, I said the English Bible because all of my research is done off the Hebrew and the Greek Old Testament, or the Hebrew Old Testament and the Greek New Testament. And so I begin to realize there's a problem here, a fundamental misunderstandings of what God said versus what people are applying. I took it upon myself about 5 years ago or so to just shuff everything, gather up my stuff, and I got a big camper trailer, and I took out to the west, to the mountains of Wyoming and Colorado and Montana, and I started doing some digging and some research in geology and anthropology and the ancient ruins up there of the dinosaurs and things like that. When you finally see these things and you actually see them, feel them, touch them, and get to know them, you begin to realize there's something wrong. Now, either the Bible is wrong or the people who are interpreting the Bible are wrong. Well, you know my position as a pastor and as a graduate from one of the leading seminaries here in Michigan. I had to take the position that the Bible can't be wrong, then the alternative is it's the interpretation of the Bible that's wrong. And so I started off saying, look, I'm going to solve this problem in my own heart and in my own mind by doing my own translation. And what I discovered was, unhappily, some of these modern translations are based more upon tradition than they are actual fact. So in this book that I wrote, I spent some time clarifying the interpretation of the Hebrew Old Testament from the book of Genesis. And there I clearly see, and I label in my book in the first couple chapters, the problem. Why are they translating it this old-fashioned way when it really in the Hebrew is saying something a little bit different? And that was my problem. I says, you know what, I've got to write a book.
Well, I mean, this sounds like copious research. How long did it take you to do the research and put your thoughts together? How long did it take to write the book?
Well, I'd say about 3 years. That included my trip out west. I spent a whole month out west by myself and camping in a trailer, and eating hot dogs. I also am an amateur astronomer. I have my own large telescope, and that I put that in the back of my pickup truck. And so we were up at 10,000 feet in the mountains of Wyoming, and there I was able to, with my telescope, look at Andromeda and many of these great things that you'd never see down here in Michigan at sea level because there's too many clouds. You see these beautiful things that absolutely shock the mind when you look in the heavens and you say, what, God created all that, and it's unbelievable. It's beyond our ability to perceive the beauty of His creation. So
yes, I couldn't agree with you more.
I come home kind of revived.
Well, and that's one of the things that has happened is because of all the light pollution and the clouds and all the stuff, we don't really see the sky the way ancient people saw the sky.
Exactly.
So we don't really see what they saw. And so that's got to influence what's going on. I noticed that one of the chapters of your book is entitled An Examination of Ancient Cosmologies.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting that you included that.
Well, you have to. They saw things that we don't see, and they come up with different opinions in what we come up with. Now, I don't think they were correct in much of their cosmology, but that's what they saw, and that's how they interpreted it.
How did you get access? You have some artifacts and some ancient documents of your own, but how did you get access to the documents that you used for research? Did you just use the internet, or did you physically go, or how did you do your research?
I did use the internet extensively, but I also have a large library. I've got 3,000 books right here in my own den, and then downstairs in the basement I've got another 1,000. Oh, my
goodness. You're the Library of Congress.
I don't read them all. I use a lot of them are not books meant to be read from cover to cover. They're reference books, okay? Like they're when you want to dig into things and do research. And of course, because my seminary training included training in the ancient Hebrew language and the ancient Greek language, I've got Bibles written only in Hebrew. They were old, but they're still adequate. And I've got some Greek. I think my oldest Greek Bible is like 200 years old. So there you go. But I do study. Some of the interesting things is the very first verse in Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Good sentence. But the problem is the translators added a word that doesn't exist in the original. In the beginning, the word "the" is not there. The word "the" is a demonstrative. It's like the word "that" or "there" or "the." So it's pointing specifically to a situation. It's been provided by the English translators because of tradition, but the word "the" does not exist It doesn't exist in the Hebrew Old Testament. It doesn't exist in the Greek Old Testament, known as the Septuagint, and it doesn't appear in our New Testament Greek. Okay, it's just not there. So it's not saying in the beginning. It's saying in a beginning, or if you read it in the Jewish Bible, it says when God began to create the heavens and the earth. And the Jewish Bible is completely different than the English Bible. So there you go.
Wow.
I have to dig into this stuff. That was my chore. And so I spent 3 years digging and writing and translating.
It sounds like the bibliography that you have in the book is a goldmine of information for an individual.
I've referred to every one of those. I didn't read every one of those books cover to cover, but I read out of every one of those books in the bibliography, yes.
Who do you think your target audience is for this book, Tom?
Christians, Bible-believing Christians, church members. And also, I had an opportunity to present my book and my research to other groups, not just a few groups. And in one case, a mother came up to me. I was selling these books because I had a collection of them. I needed to get rid of them. I needed to sell them, so I was selling them during this talk and this presentation. And this woman was kind of, what do you say, kind of tearful, And she says, my son, he was an adult. He was an agnostic. And she said, even though he was raised in the church, he's an agnostic. He doesn't believe the Bible or anything like that. She says, she was all excited. She said, but he bought a copy of your book, and he read it. So it's kind of had an effect there, in some way that the guy was able to see that there's another viewpoint opposite of what he might have been taught in Sunday school for years and chose not to believe. And so I had some reaffirmations of some of these people letting me know that, hey, they really appreciated it, because there is a problem in some churches where they're dogmatic, and it says, you will believe what we tell you to believe or else. And my argument is, I don't. You don't talk to me that. In my book, remember, I mentioned the fact that back when I was a young fella in church, I remember the pastor standing up there and saying that man would never go into space because God says so. And I'm thinking to myself, well, my plan at the time was to sign up for University of Michigan and the School of Aeronautical Engineering. I was kind of bewildered. Well, how can a young teenager like me, a Christian fella, go to college and study things that the pastor says can't happen? Well, of course, the pastor was wrong. Man did go into space a few years later after. So, this kind of stuff, I remember my grandpa telling me that his pastor, when he was a young kid, said the man would never fly. Well, guess what? He did. So this kind of stuff propagates among too many churches to this day. And,
Well, and if somebody came up with this, we're all children of God. So how could, if I come up with space travel, or if I'm the Wright brothers and I come up with how to fly, then that can't be wrong.
Right. Correct.
I mean, I remember there was a quote that I have right here. It says, the universe and all that is in it is the work of God, and the Bible is the Word of God. It is not logical for the works of God to be a contradiction to the Word of God. And I thought that was quite interesting. I think you talked about the fact that we're losing church members. Yes. Do you think that a book like yours, maybe your book in particular, would be a way, if people read this book, for them to believe slightly differently and feel like they could come back to a church that was more relevant for them? Am I off base?
Well, yes.